Shadow the Hedgehog is one of the most popular characters in the vast catalog of faces in the Sonic the Hedgehog series. So today, I want to take a look at a bunch of his major video game appearances to showcase why I've grown to care so much about this badass hedgehog. This ranges from one of the most confusing games of all time to one of the best games in the entire Sonic franchise. This is my love letter to Shadow the Hedgehog. The character, not the game. We'll get to it. So Sonic Adventure 2 is a game founded on the concept of duality and rivalries. The game's story consisted of two campaigns, one focusing on the heroes and the other the villains, with gameplay being designed around 3 different playstyles which were shared between 2 characters who were rivals to each other on each side. The plot would focus more on freak experiments and sci-fi tech than Adventure 1's focus on mysticism and natural forces of destruction. This new focus would be the founding concept behind the creation of Shadow the Hedgehog as yet another rival to Sonic after Metal Sonic and Knuckles briefly took that role during the classic era. As for his origin in-universe, one day Eggman was taking a destructive stroll through a government facility in order to look for some research to use for his own gain from his grandfather, Gerald Robotnik. There, he finds the grand culmination of Gerald's research, Project Shadow, otherwise known as Shadow the Hedgehog. The Hedgehog works with Robotnik in his evil scheme since he wants revenge on the humans for the death of his dear friend, a young girl named Maria. Being another fast hedgehog, just in a different color scheme, the stupid people of America think Shadow is Sonic when he's out committing nefarious acts. Naturally, Sonic gets pissed at this framing, beginning the rivalry between the two hedgehogs. Compared to the hot-headed yet heroic Sonic, Shadow is more calm and confident and sure of himself as the ultimate life form. Shadow believes his greatness is a fact of life, which inadvertently makes him a bit cocky, just in a different way to Sonic's cockiness. While both hedgehogs use their cockiness to state their superiority, their philosophies are wildly different, with Shadow's focusing on vengeance and Sonic's freedom. By the last story of the game, Shadow is content with his doomed fate, initially not helping the heroes in Eggman trying to save the world from Gerald's final gambit. However, thanks to a pep talk from Amy, Shadow remembers the full context of Maria's words, to give humanity another chance despite their failings. Not everyone can be born the perfect life form. Some people need to grow and develop. Those imperfections can be beautiful or deadly, so we need to nurture the beautiful side of it. With a new outlook on life, Shadow fights the Bio-Lizard, his prototype, who's seemingly based on Perfect Chaos from Sonic Adventure 1 in-universe. This shows how Adventure 2 smartly succeeds at being an interesting sequel from Adventure 1, where 1 focuses on natural conflict, 2 focuses on man-made conflict, showing the good and bad of humanity's potential, a theme emphasized throughout the game by the rivalries formed within the hero and dark story structures. Basically, Shadow and the Bio-Lizard are scientific recreations of Sonic and Chaos from Adventure 1. After the climactic live and learn fight, Shadow sacrifices himself to save the very world he was trying to destroy all game. This causes Sonic to reflect on Shadow's character in the end credits, declaring he was what he was, and ultimately his heroic actions in the end define the kind of person he'll be remembered as. Sayonara, Shadow the Hedgehog. Then the game came out, and Shadow was super duper popular with audiences, so they brought him back for 2003's Sonic Heroes. Now, Sonic Heroes is an interesting game to talk about from a writing perspective, because it's more about all the fun flavor text interactions between its teams of characters than the overarching storyline. It's more like a briefer episode in between the big event games, where stuff is still happening, but it's not the most life-changing thing ever for these characters. In the case of Team Dark, while we're introduced to Omega, one of the best Sonic characters, Shadow's fate is left a mystery even by the end of the game. Rouge discovers at the end of Team Dark's campaign that the Shadow we've been following could have possibly been a clone, a faker, a cheap imitation of what the real Shadow was. Nobody was quite sure what to make of this Shadow, both in and out of universe. These questions would be, well, I don't know if expanded on is the right word, but let's just say toyed around with in the 2005 video game titled Shadow the Hedgehog. This game is really frustrating. Honestly, I don't mind the preteen angst and swearing this game is surrounded by. I think that's legitimately entertaining, and the retcons made to Shadow's origins to make him tie into the game's new villainous group, aliens known as the Black Arms, could have been a fun idea, but then we get out of the conceptualization stage and into the actual game, and oh boy, this is rough. The controls were very slippery, the levels went on for way too long, the weapon system was actually quite fun, but to counterbalance that, all the missions you had to do to unlock Last Story are pure padding and not fun. I'm grateful the Shadow the Hedgehog Reloaded mod exists, because it eases up on the mission structure, tightens up the controls, and only requires you to play the game 3 times to get Last Story, as opposed to the 10+, but that doesn't excuse the base game's obtuse design problems. Not everyone is gonna be playing the Reloaded mod, nor should they, to get a good experience. I'll give credit to the game's level design that there's teleporter checkpoints to help you explore the level if you miss anything you need to collect or defeat, but it doesn't feel as natural as I want exploration on a Sonic level to be. Instead of taking different pathways, I'm stopping and going all over the place to complete the mission. Maybe if these missions were in a hub world-esque area, I'd be more down with them. Legitimately, before I played Reloaded this year, I considered Shadow the Hedgehog one of my least favorite Sonic games, which was not helped by the bizarre pacing of story events and individual playthroughs. I get that the multiple ending plot encourages the viewer to piece everything together themselves, but it doesn't help that besides Shadow's typical cool characterization, I just didn't care about all the moving parts and factions, especially because of that weird story pacing. Watching a cutscene compilation on YouTube might improve things, but much like the Reloaded mod, I shouldn't need that to enjoy the game. Again, I don't mind Shadow with weapons, I don't mind the angsty tone, I don't even mind the retcons. I just find playing this game frustrating as all hell. I can squeeze fun out of it, but that feels like squeezing blood from a stone. Hey, funny story, do you want to know how we get the answer to finding out if this Shadow is the real Shadow from Adventure 2 and not something else? We have to wait 10 minutes in the final boss fight for Eggman to tell us it's the real Shadow in a background piece of dialogue, which really shows how often you gotta look for breadcrumbs of characterization and lore in these games, but it's also the culmination of how frustrating an overall package Shadow's first solo game is. The poor state of this game makes me sad, man, and along with everything around Sonic 06, this led to Shadow being relegated to background appearances for the next few years. He still remained popular with the fans, but for Sega and Sonic Team, his spark burned out way too quickly as they moved on to focusing on Sonic first and foremost. At the time, I considered this the right move, but as the 2010s moved on, it was frustrating that Sonic himself couldn't move from the olden days of Green Hills when there was so much untapped potential the franchise had. Not to mention some of the botched characterization from other mainstays that stuck around like Tails and Knuckles. However, after Forces in 2017, things started to change slowly but surely. Not only did Sonic Team go back to the drawing board for their next game, The Fantastic Frontiers, but Sonic's multimedia wings were spreading and gaining new fans. The IDW comic books launched in 2018 and are big hits, the Hollywood movies get lots of hype from general audiences, and sure, you got your stinkers such as The Knuckles Show or Sonic Prime, but still, Sonic's overall popularity was genuinely growing for the first time in a while. Not to mention, starting with Team Sonic Racing, every new major Sonic game, whether it be a port, spin-off, or something new, would get these amazing animated shorts that would slowly but surely bring these characters back to the peak of their characterization. They started off goofy but charming, but with stuff like Mania's Holiday Special and Frontier's Divergence, we saw potential for more heartfelt and dramatic stories being told within these animations, which brings us to arguably one of the best animated shorts they've ever done for this initiative, 2024's Sonic X Shadow Generations Dark Beginnings. This cartoon reintroduces and expands on Shadow's backstory and relationship with Maria, along with setting up the events for his campaign in the new game. It's really well animated, you got some tasty yet well done melodrama, and it's so nice to see Shadow interact with Omega and Rouge again after so long. It also keeps proving why Omega is one of the best Sonic characters. As for the game the cartoon was made to promote, we have Shadow Generation. This is a new campaign included within the Sonic X Shadow Generations remaster, which was most likely made to spice up a re-release of a 10-year-old game while tying into the fearless year of Shadow brought by the third movie's big centerpiece being Shadow on the big screen. Despite these seemingly cheap origins, Shadow Generations has quickly become a contender for one of my favorite Sonic games, as it combines the exciting multi-layered boost levels of Generations with the new powers and spectacles found in Frontiers. Ian Flynn's script smartly uses the Generations backdrop to do what he did with Sonic Frontiers for Shadow's side of the Sonic universe, taking past lore and references to introduce these long-standing concepts and characters to new fans while reminding older fans why we love these stories and games to begin with. Shadow Generations' story might not have a lot of twists and turns, but much like Sonic Frontiers, it has a lot of substance in its limited runtime thanks to its character interactions and small moments. Shadow gains the new Doom powers from his Black Arms DNA and must accept to use his evil blood for justice while getting closure for Maria and Gerald by seeing them one last time. It's simple but very effective and gripping, especially because this is the best animated Sonic game yet. The presentation, both in gameplay and cutscenes, is a treat for the eyes. Shadow Generation shows that Sonic Team is committed to continuing the era of Sonic that Frontiers established. Gone are the days of making gimmicky playstyles for one game and throwing it away the next. We are actively improving on elements the past games established, which creates one of the most polished Sonic games of all time, which is kinda crazy going off the rough framework and legacy of Shadow the Hedgehog's 2005 game that this one takes a lot of influence from. But that's another brilliant thing about Shadow Generations. It owns up to the past, not just in Shadow getting closure for everything he's been through, but in the legacy levels and bosses referencing more controversial elements of the series and making them cool events. Examples include bringing back Mephiles from 06, with Shadow not even remembering him existing due to the time bullshit of that game, Sunset Heights from Forces going from a painfully linear level to one of the best in the whole game, and having Black Doom from the first Shadow game being a central focus of the game's overall gameplay and story. Sonic Team is not hiding from its past anymore, and much like Shadow, it's ready to face it down with no fear. Shadow Generations is an excellent game, and it makes me even more excited for what the big Frontiers follow-up is going to look like. I hope Sonic and Shadow will both be playable in it, similar to how Peter and Miles were both selectable characters for Spider-Man 2 on PS5, but whatever it may be, I'm just happy I could learn to love the character of Shadow the Hedgehog. While Shadow may be the source of a lot of edgy-based jokes from a lot of the gaming community, this journey of going down the character's biggest moments really showed me that even at his weakest, I still think he's an awesome character. From his jet black twist on Sonic's design, to the vocal delivery by the various voice actors over the years, to his melodramatic stories, I've learned to love so much about this character thanks to this big marketing push and delving deeper into his stories. Before the fearless year of Shadow, Shadow wasn't even in my top 10 Sonic characters. Now he's in my top 3 next to Metal Sonic and Omega. All hail Shadow, baby!